Hi, Year 11. Okay, so I'm going to do something a little bit different today, just in terms of essay practice. I know all of you are doing Pigeon English, so I thought that might be a good use of your time during Friday's lesson. So the first thing I want you to do is to write down this question. How does Kelman represent the importance of friendship in the novel Pigeon English? What does friendship mean to Harry and his peers? How is friendship represented through other characters in the novel? So as I'm making this as a YouTube video, so if you pause it right now, write that down, and then I want you to come up with a mind map or a spider diagram of how you will answer it. So you need to have four main topics, four main different relationships, friendships that you want to discuss, and then I'll pop back on the video and see how we get on. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so this is what I've come up with. You've probably come up with a lot of the same things. I'm starting off with this one, Harry and Jordan versus Harry and Dean. Remember, Harry and Dean are the investigators, Harry and Jordan. Jordan's quite a negative influence, isn't he? He shows him the knife, he does all of those different things. But we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a bit. Harry and the Dead Boy, I feel like that's actually quite an interesting friendship because obviously it propels the action of the novel throughout, and it's something that Harry never quite recovers from, and it's something he focuses on quite a lot. Makita and Lydia, definitely an important friendship, just in terms of like the power imbalance and the idea of friendship as a type of protection in the community that Harry lives in and Lydia lives in. Harry and the Pigeon, obviously that's an important, the anthropomorphism aspect of the novel is really important there. You know, we have to ask ourselves, why does Harry rely so heavily on this pigeon for friendship and companionship and support? One of the other things I came up with, which I was quite central, was the idea of the lack of friendship or solidarity in the adult world. We don't see an awful lot of that. In fact, it's a very individualistic society where everyone is out for themselves. So, you know, what does that tell us about the younger generation's friendships? Are they sustainable? Are they do they have a future, etc.? Okay, so that's the plan. Obviously, please feel free to use the points that you've come up with. If you've struggled in any way to come up with some points, please feel free to take some of mine. The next step is to find quotes to accompany each point, okay? So we need maybe 1 to 2 quotes per paragraph. So pause the video and do that now. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully you've had time to find your quotes for each of your paragraphs, each of your topics. Let's start off with Harry and Jordan versus Harry and Dean. So Harry and Jordan, you have, I used the quote, "Scratch dead on the door." He's a much more sinister influence. The war knife that he shows Harry as well. The idea of dead on the door, like, I mean, for that to happen, that's quite a terrifying thing to see on your door, but the fact that it's done by somebody who's a peer of Harry's says an awful lot about the society he's living in. Harry and Dean, they have a much more childlike relationship. They investigate the boy's murder together, basically relatively innocent, using lingo like Roger that, copy, and they kind of work together and they're more of a team. Probably the closest to a genuine friendship that we see in the novel. Then we have Harry and the Dead Boy. Obviously, that's a more difficult one there's not as much evidence there, but he is obviously upset. The Dead Boy is massively in Harry's mind the entire way through the novel. He gives him a bouncy ball as a mark of respect at the beginning of the novel. And then, in fact, his devotion to solving the murder of the Dead Boy actually causes him his own life. So basically, the multiple references to Dead Boy throughout the novel is very telling as well. Even though he mightn't have considered him a friend, there was a bond there. Then, of course, we have Makita and Lydia. So Makita saying, "You're either with us or against us" in it. That kind of classic threatening phrase. Lydia, of course, "At least my boyfriend's not a murderer." That's kind of a turning point, isn't it? It's a turning point where Lydia sort of stands up for herself and confronts Makita. Then we have Harry and the Pigeon. I love this quote, "Full of love like a battery." It's very near the last moments of the novel where Harry looks at the pigeon and realizes this. And the idea of the pigeon being full of love like a battery can be recharged, a battery can be rejuvenated, and maybe the pigeon's love for him transcends the planes of the human realm into something bigger. And I love what the pigeon says to Harry as well. It's probably the best piece of advice he gets, which is, "Home will always find you if you walk true and taller than those weeds." And we know that Harry is exposed to a lot of weeds every single day in the form of social deprivation, in the form of like social neglect. So yeah, that's a very important relationship. And then I thought this lack of friendship or solidarity in the adult world could almost be like my my umbrella point, my larger point that I'm going to make. Because if you think about it, if we look at the sort of the segregation of the never normals, the isolation of Fag Ash Lil, the deportation of Nish and his wife, it just all points to this very, very selfish, individualistic society where no one basically protects or cares for anyone else. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause this again, and I'm going to ask you to go ahead now and make some for each one, make a context point. Analysis will come as you're writing it, so don't worry about that, but I want to see context points linked to whatever paragraphs you have. Okay, so do that now, and I will go and do it, and then we will meet back. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to make your context points. I'm just going to move through mine really carefully. The Harry and Jordan context point, what I've said is basically it links to the socially deprived areas, how even morally aware children like Dean can become exposed to cruel knife violence, but also in the same time, someone like Jordan, who's already predisposed to violence, has everything at his fingertips. So there's a lack of hope there with both of those actual characters, to be honest. Then moving on to Harry and the Dead Boy. This offers us a really interesting insight into the reality of knife crime in London, the sort of facelessness of the crime, the anonymity of the victims, the fact that the dead boy goes unidentified shows that he's just, as far as society is concerned, he's a statistic rather than a real person with a real backstory. The lack of justice, of course, the link to the Damilola Taylor murder as well. And then moving on to Makita and Lydia. So we have the dangers, obviously, of gang culture and the influence over vulnerable young people. I mean, we might not think it, but Lydia is actually quite a vulnerable young person moving to a new community, trying to fit in an environment that's quite hostile. And this kind of a gang, like Makita, Chanel, they provide a false sense of family or belonging to her that she really does need at this moment. Moving on then to Harry and the Pigeon. The Pigeon is Kelman's anthropomorphic voice. It's the social commentary of the injustice and the failings of society and humanity itself. So the Pigeon's a very, very important character in the in the novel, in that we have that dual narrative. But I feel like contextually speaking, the Pigeon forms the social commentary that we need. And then just here, with the lack of friendship or solidarity in the adult world, I've just said that basically living in a socially deprived community can often force people to become more individualistic and seemingly selfish, but actually it's a desire to survive rather than being purposefully selfish. It's a desire to survive. So we do see an awful lot of that in the novel. Okay, so we've got our plan, we've got our quotes, we've got our context links, and now we just need to write it up. I'm not going to write the entire thing, but I will write one paragraph and share with you. Ideally, you will be doing the same or potentially writing a practice essay yourself based on what you've come up with. I'll check back with you in a second. Just pause the video. Okay, so this is my attempt. Please forgive me, as I'm sure you're aware. Let me just see. Okay, when we consider friendships in the novel, the toxic relationship between Makita and Lydia offers a very revealing insight into the lives of teenagers in this society. So that's the point I'm making in my paragraph, is about the toxic relationships that get formed. After implicating Lydia directly in the dead boy's murder by having her dispose of evidence, Makita threatens Lydia, saying, "You're either with us or against us in it." The use of this very powerful phrasing, coupled with her use of colloquial language, is an intimidating moment for Lydia, clearly identifying the very limited options that lie ahead of her. And that's basically my kind of small analysis of the quote. This interaction exemplifies the dangers. Now, this is my context link. This interaction exemplifies the dangers of gang culture and the influence of gangs over vulnerable young people. For someone newly arrived to the community like Lydia, the ominous "with us" implies a false sense of family and a feeling of belonging in a very volatile community. In this sense, we can argue that friendship is often used as a manipulative, coercive bond that sees young people being drawn towards negative criminal forces. So that's one sample paragraph. Unfortunately, my COVID brain isn't letting me write a lot more than that. But I would encourage you guys to go off now and write a little bit more. And if you want to send me a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs, that's absolutely fine. I will give you feedback. Again, I'm so sorry to have missed you all this week. But hopefully you've been able to structure your revision. I know that you guys are very focused and you'll be doing that. But if you have any questions or concerns, just email me, and I hope you manage to have a lovely, restful Easter break. Take care, guys. Bye.